Hey, folks, it's 8:39, and KFYI, great to have you with us. Now, listen, I said this a minute ago. We're all bogged down here in whether or not the new judge is new nominee to the Supreme Court is going to be sensitive to immigration issues because now La Raza is upset that she's not of Mexican descent. She's of Puerto Rican descent. So we're arguing about all of this, and meanwhile, North Korea started its nuclear reactor. They announced while we were sleeping that they were going to abandon the 1953 accord that stopped the fighting. And, oh, yeah, we may have a nuclear war. And so let's get this sorted out. Here's Senator John McCain, folks.
Good morning, Barry.
What? Look, I hardly know where to start with you. It's an important thing that we have a Supreme Court nominee.
Yep.
And Republicans are going to have their hands full. And, you know, the first thing's going to happen when Republicans come along and say, all right, let's talk about the issues. Somebody's going to start screaming racism and all of that. But let's talk about the North Koreans for a minute. How big is this?
I think it's a threat to the national security interests of the United States of America, Japan, peace in the region. And I'll try and make it short, but the fact is that I'm proud of the fact there's not been another attack on the United States since 9/11. I do believe that the Bush administration deserves great credit for that, which they haven't. But the Bush administration did not handle the North Korea situation well, nor is the Obama administration. They have continued to test nuclear weapons. They are developing rockets that can deliver them as far away as the United States of America. These missiles are going over Japan. We have accommodated them time after time after time. We have violated Ronald Reagan's fundamental statement, trust but verify, on as far as their dismantlement of their nuclear capabilities. This is a huge threat, and the only country right now that has significant influence over North Korea is China, and the Chinese have failed to act in an effective fashion. The Chinese could collapse the North Korean economy. They won't do that because then they'd have millions of North Korean refugees. But the point is the Chinese do have great influence over them. They've exercised a little bit in the past, but now is the time. It is clear that North Korea is a aberrational, repressive, oppressive, unpredictable regime, and if you put nuclear weapons and missiles that can deliver them, by the way, they haven't quite matched those up, you have an enormous threat to America's national security.
But that's the goal, to match the
that's
missiles.
what they're working on.
Okay.
Yeah, they're testing these missiles, and by the way, their behavior is so bizarre that you can't believe it. I saw an article the other day about a guy that Googles on certain places in North Korea. This dictator there's got a water slide, huge mansions. He was reputed to have one of the world's largest collections of pornography. And meanwhile, people are literally starving to death. Do you know that the South Koreans are 3 to 4 inches, average South Koreans, 3 to 4 inches taller than a North Korean?
Just because of nutrition.
Because of decades of diet. I mean, it is the most Orwellian government on earth, and now we have weapons of mass destruction, and my caution is do not expect them to behave rationally the way we would behave.
Yeah, the media.
That's why this is such a threat.
The pundits are on saying, well, North Korea wants something. All we got to do is figure out what they want, and they're just trying to get our attention.
They want attention. They want prestige. They want money. Because they have no economy. The money that they make is the counterfeiting. One of the things we did was we freeze some of their assets in a bank in Macau, and that was hurting them some. They demanded that we unfreeze that money, and we did. In return for what? They said that they would dismantle the Yongbyon reactor. You remember when they blew up the towers, and that was on television, on CNN and everything?
Yeah.
It was a phony baloney thing. That wasn't where the fissile material was. It is, well, a lot of things are going on in the world, and a lot of things are going on in our economy and Supreme Court justice we need to talk about. But do not underestimate this issue and the importance of it to security in the region and in the world.
Now, let me ask you one other foreign policy issue. Iran's got 6 warships down in the just outside of the Straits of Hormuz in the what is it, Gulf of Oman or whatever the thing is down there.
Straits of Hormuz, where some huge percentage of the world's oil supply goes through.
Why is it that us and Great Britain haven't gone down there with our magnificent navies and run them the hell out? What's going on here?
Because they have access to the oceans just like we do, and they have surface-to-surface missiles as well, and it would be a very provocative act, but and in fact unlawful as far as international law is concerned. But having said that, we should understand that that's another significant indication of the expansionist Persian ambitions in the region. The Iranians want to dominate the region. If we had withdrawn from Iraq, it would have been a huge victory. They are seeking influence in the region, which they have for thousands of years, and part of it is naval presence, and another part of it, which the Israelis will not submit to forever, is their nuclear weapons acquisition, which they continue to make significant progress on. Right. We live in a very dangerous world, Barry. And by the way, I hope we can maybe take some calls this morning.
Let's try. Let's try. One question on the judge. Here's the big question on the judge. How will Republicans mount an offense against this judge without it immediately being caused to disintegrate into talk of racism and sexism and you people only want an old white man on the court and on and on and on. So what's the move?
I think the best thing for Republicans to do, and by the way, John Kyle, my colleague, my esteemed colleague in the Senate, holds a key position on the Judiciary Committee, is to have the hearings. Let the witness come forward and testify. Examine the record of the nominee and make a judgment there. Do I have concerns already from some of the statements and the judge, the decision concerning the firemen in Connecticut, which we could talk about? I do, but I also believe that we should go through the process, have the hearings, and then and debate on the floor of the Senate, and then make a judgment. Both John Kyle and I voted against her in an appeals court appointment some years ago.
But she is now, some people say Republicans don't have enough votes to stop it.
Well, elections have consequences. In all candor, if I had been elected president, that would not have been my nominee. I'm not saying she's not qualified, but I was saying obviously it would not have been my nominee, and elections have consequences.
You want to take some phone calls? We'll do some phone calls.
Could I just mention one other thing?
Sure.
Mark Busey, my staff guy, says, we spent 70 days analyzing Alito and Roberts, 70 days before we had a hearing on Justices Alito and Roberts. We ought to take some time to examine the record.
What's the rush?
Judge Sotomayor.
It seems that they, meaning the president's people, want to get her in before the House and Senate is gone for the summer, for August. I mean, this seems to be the push. She's got to go, like everything else. It's got to happen right now.
This is one of the most important responsibilities of a president of the United States. It should not be rushed, and I don't care what the backlash is. I'm not going to be rushed, and I know that John Kyle has already said he's not going to be either.
All right. We'll take some phone calls. Let's squeeze one in here. 602-260-KFYI. Tom in Phoenix and Senator John McCain. Hey, Tom, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks so much. Hey, first of all, Senator McCain, thank you so much for your service to our country. Some of us have not forgotten it. My question is simple. Does anybody, yourself, well, it sounds like you do, but does anybody else have the guts to stand up and say this woman, what she talks about, judicial activism, legislating from the bench, is not what the United States is all about. The United States, you're the lawmaker, she's the law interpreter. And when she says, as she said in that highlight reel we've all seen now, that it's her job to make the laws, it's not her job. And somebody needs to point out that that's not what the United States is all about. And the question is, does anybody else, yourself included, have the guts to get on the floor of the Senate and make that kind of statement?
Well, first of all, you're exactly right, but I think you would also agree that we have to lay out the entire record. We have to give any nominee of the president. The president does have the constitutional authority to nominate, but the Senate has the constitutional responsibility to advise and consent. So I'm sure that will be part of the consideration that I give it, but let's look at her overall record. Let's look at her testimony. Let's look at her performance before the Judiciary Committee. And I would remind you that that then Senator Obama, then when Justice Alito was up for confirmation for the United States Senate, wanted to and sought to and tried to filibuster Judge Alito's nomination to the Supreme Court of the United States of America. So if there's some allegation that it's wrong, if, and I emphasize if, some senator believes that it should be filibustered, well, that wasn't the way then Senator Obama felt about Justice Alito. You see my point?
Going to pause for 1 second. Yes, I do. We're going to pause for 1 second, Senator John McCain. We'll get right back and take another phone call in a moment. It's KFYI.
Arizona's award-winning news at the top and bottom of every hour. Only on News Talk 550 KFYI. KFYI.com.
Senator John McCain is in the studios with us this morning. It's KFYI. And, yes, we will put if you would like to dial in, we can squeeze a few calls in here because the senator's going to stay a little while after the 9 o'clock news also. 602-260-KFYI. Look, before we do anything else, so let's talk for a minute about General Motors. The word out today, the United States government what will we own? 70% of General Motors? Is that it?
70%, and the UAW does not want that much, but it'll be the federal government and the UAW that owns so much of General Motors. But more importantly, they'll need another $50 billion. They've already been given some $30 billion. I'm going to do the math sometime today as to how many cars we could have just given away free rather than using taxpayers' dollars in this fashion. I said months ago, GM and Chrysler had to go into bankruptcy. You can go into restructured bankruptcy and emerge almost immediately. Instead, we have injected tens of billions of dollars of taxpayers' money, and now the federal government is in the automobile business. We're in the banking business. We're going to be in the insurance business. This is the greatest transfer of wealth from power, the greatest transfer of power from the free enterprise system to the government in the history of this nation.
But wasn't this supposed to be a temporary, like a receivership?
Oh, yeah.
Wasn't it supposed to be temporary?
Yeah. We got one foot in, and then another, and then another, and then another. And it's, and by the way, it's also a testimony to the power of the unions, particularly UAW union, but also other unions in America.
So you believe this 70% stake, the 70% ownership is for the long run, for forever? As long as forever is, whatever forever is in
Tell
politics.
me a time in history when, on rare occasions, have they gotten into part of the free enterprise system and then gotten out? This is terrible. This is terrible, Barry. This is really awful. And GM and Chrysler are where they are today, with all due respect and sympathy for all the people who are being impacted by this, because of labor management agreements that made them non-competitive with automobile manufacturing facilities in the United States of America that are located in the South.
You want to take another phone call?
Anytime. Yeah, more.
602-260-KFYI. John McCain and Dave in Mesa. Dave, hi. Are you there,
Hey,
Dave?
how you doing?
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I was just talking to Andy there, and what I said was, how about those troops over there in South Korea? Who's going to defend them if this whack job in North Korea goes after them? And what are we doing? What's these flim-flam artists down there, the socialists in the White House? What are they going to do about Iran?
Okay, hold on 1 second. Let's just go back to the North Korea thing. We have American troops there.
We have American troops, and the North Koreans have artillery in the form of rockets and other weapons that could set Seoul on fire. They're close enough within that range. They do not, however, the North Korean military is incredibly weak otherwise, but an initial attack from North Korea on South Korea would incinerate the capital of South Korea.
So they can't win the war, but they can do a lot of damage before they lose it.
Tremendous damage. Okay. And you put nuclear weapons in their hands, my friends, and it's incredibly dangerous. And, Dave, you make a very good point. Our obligation is the protection of the men and women who are serving in the military, including and especially those based in South Korea.
Here's Robert in Tempe with Senator John McCain. Robert, hi.
Hi. Yeah, I was wondering, the TARP funds, I think, went to the to the automotive manufacturers back in December or so, and at that point they were predicting that they may still have to file bankruptcy, and it was like more than 90 days later. Under the bankruptcy code, debt paid on or payments on a debt that's more than 90 days old at the time constitutes, or actually old debt will constitute a preference, and the trustee in bankruptcy can get the money back. And I have the sense that they were waiting for the 90 days or more to pass, maybe even the 180 to get past the insider rules, so that the trustee in bankruptcy, when they finally file, can't get the money back that the government gave to the auto company.
But if the government owns the auto companies anyway, I mean, there's no reason to go and get it back.
Yeah, and Robert, could I also mention again, before all of this injection of these tens of billions of dollars, and by the way, I've lost track of it. I think it's as much as 30 billion already, and now they're going to have another 50. If we'd have just had them go into bankruptcy to start with before we gave them this money, they could have come out of bankruptcy. How many companies and businesses go into bankruptcy and come out under restructured conditions and are viable? Instead, in all due respect to the power of the unions, they didn't do that. And by the way, on Chrysler, as you also know, they turned 200 years of precedent on its head by not paying off the first people that deserve to be the bondholders.
Yeah. All right. We're going to pause for a second. A little bit into the 9 o'clock hour. All right. Hold on. News next. And John McCain, Senator John McCain, will stay with us a few minutes in the 9 o'clock hour. You want to get on the lines with a question, we'll pick a couple and put them on the air. Don't go away, folks.